Class is now in session. I am Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing the game between the Sharks and the Tampa Bay Lightning, in which the Sharks managed to win 5-2. By far, the Sharks' best game of the season. They were playing against by far the best team in the league, and it was not a game where the Sharks got some lucky bounces. This was not a game that they were completely dominated but somehow managed to squeak out a victory. This was a game that the Sharks were clearly the better team, and it showed on the scoreboard with the 5-2 win. Almost all of the Sharks were clicking at an extremely high level. The Lightning players just, maybe you could say that they weren't playing very well. Vasilevsky, in particular, their goaltender, didn't have the best game, let in a couple of soft goals, including Evander Kane's fourth, I believe. But still, the Sharks were clearly the superior team by the end of this game. Not saying that they're the better team than the Lightning in general, but just in this one game, the Sharks were better, the Lightning were worse, and it was very exciting to see that the Sharks were able to pull something like that off. But in the first period, it was a bit more Lightning favored. The Sharks did manage to emerge with a 2-1 lead, but I felt like they didn't get too many great chances. The Lightning had a good amount of zone time. However, one positive about that is that the Sharks managed to limit the amount of chances the Lightning did get in that zone time. They did hit one post. They obviously got a goal from Victor Hedman after a bit of a Brent Burns misplay. But for the Sharks, it was Logan Couture as well as Joe Pavelski's 25th goal of the season. And the Sharks had the 2-1 lead. Now, of course, they had led 2-0 at a point in this game. The Lightning had a 6-4 record, a winning record, in a game in which they give up the first 2 goals, which is just an insane stat to have. However, that now goes to 6-5 with this loss. Coming to the second period, the teams got a bit more even. I felt like the Sharks played a much better second period. The Lightning were still rather competitive. However, both teams exchanged goals. Evander Kane on the power play, his 13th, as well as Sergachev. Of course, can't have a Sharks game without a player scoring their first goal of the season. Sergachev gets his. Even we're halfway through the season, the Sharks are still managing to find ways to give that up. And the Sharks held a 3-2 lead by the end of the third period. Now, I was worried, of course, after a 3-goal lead was held by the Sharks going into the third period against the Avalanche, and that ended up being a 1-goal victory. But the Sharks played an absolutely fantastic third period, certainly their best third period of the season. They held the Lightning to just 3 shots while getting 17 themselves. Evander Kane made it 4-2. Lukas Radil made it rather late in this game 5-2, and the Sharks, they did not turtle with a lead. They did not let the Lightning run all over them in this third period. A fantastic offensive team like the Lightning, first place in the league in terms of offense and just in terms of in general. But they did not let the Lightning run all over them in the third period. A fantastic offensive, defensive third period, and the Sharks got the 5-2 victory. And by the way, the Lightning also were 5-4, if I'm not mistaken, when coming into the second period in a deficit. And so another winning record there for the Lightning. I think that's the only winning record, trailing by 2 in the NHL. They're now 5-5, so it ends up being at 500. First thing I'd like to talk about has to be Martin Jones. He had a fantastic game. I said he'd have to play his best of the season. I'm not sure if it was his best of the season, but he was very, very good. Didn't have much of a chance on the Hedman goal. The Sergachev one, he ends up getting collided with after this one, but it was a nice play by Sergachev, of course. But after that, Jones was solid. He made some great saves, a couple on the Braden Point especially. I thought Point had a couple of very good chances. Martin Jones was spectacular. He left the game, of course, with some sort of skate issue for about like a minute. Aaron Dell came in and made one very nice save. I mean, not very nice, but still a save. And so he has the 100% save percentage. But Martin Jones, while it's not 100%, he was still extremely solid, and he was certainly a huge part in the Sharks being able to take this 5-2 victory and limiting the Lightning to just 2 goals. Lightning don't normally get limited to just 2 goals in a game. Next is the top 4 defense, and I thought Jones was a huge part of the reason why the Sharks won this game. I feel like the main part, however, was this top 4. Brent Burns, spectacular game with over or close to 31 minutes, so over 30 minutes. Brent Burns with 3 assists. Yeah, he made a bit of a mistake on the Victor Hedman goal, but otherwise, he was absolutely fantastic, both offensively and defensively. Erik Karlsson as well, not as good offensively as Brent Burns, but still solid. He got, I believe, 2 assists, if not mistaken. Also extremely good defensively. Since Vlasic and Braun, the 2 defensemen who are normally taking these tough matchups, I believe Karlsson got the majority of the matchups against the Braden Point line, Point, Kucherov, and Johnson, and he was up to the task with his defensive partner, Brendan Dillon, who also had an extremely strong defensive game. He played about 22 minutes, Karlsson getting close to 30 as well. And then one thing that I was extremely surprised about was Joakim Ryan. I had pointed out that Ryan probably had his worst game of his career against the Colorado Avalanche, and I thought it would only get worse here against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And with Šimek, Vlasic, and Braun out of the lineup tonight, Ryan was thrust into a top 4 role in this game, and he definitely stepped up to the plate this time. He played over 20 minutes, which is by far his most in his career, basically. I think he had like 16 around against the Avalanche. I'm not actually sure if that's by far the most in his career, but I'm going to say it is. But Joachim Ryan was spectacular in this game. Great, especially in comparison, and I don't want to be like making exaggerations here every single time, but this may have been one of his best, if not his best game of his career, especially against a team like the Lightning, if you consider that. And so the top 4 for the Sharks was fantastic. Tim Heed had some troubles defensively. He did bring it back a bit, got some shifts in the third period, looked a bit better in that regard. And Middleton, the Sharks rookie, who came up for this game, only got a few minutes, I think like 5 or 6 in the game. He was okay. He was on the ice for the Sergachev goal, not really his fault. It was more Tim Heat's fault for getting walked. But Middleton was decent, didn't really get the chance to show much, and we'll see if Vlasic or Šimek, who seem to be some sort of game time decisions coming into this one of them hopefully will be back for the game on Monday. Next is Lukáš Radil. He added another goal tonight, his 6th of the season, and he continues to impress. I had said earlier on when these 3 players were put together, Radil, Couture, and Meier, that this was probably something that wasn't permanent. It wouldn't last, but Radil continues to prove me wrong. He continues to play some solid brand of hockey. You know, he's not getting tons and tons of minutes. He's not something that somebody that the Boer is relying on heavily. You know, Couture and Meier are still hanging around at like 17, 18 minutes. Radil, I believe, had like 13 tonight, but still, he gets a goal here. He's getting it done offensively. He's actually working pretty well with Couture and Meier, and so maybe this is actually a permanent solution going forward for the San Jose Sharks. Finally, I'll finish with some other players who I thought had very good games. I'm not going to be able to get to them all, as I thought many of them had some strong games. But Evander Kane, of course, he gets 2 goals. He's been much better as of late. Evander Kane is an extremely streaky player. It was said to the Sharks fans coming in when he came into the Sharks organization that he was a streaky player. He came in at the deadline, was fantastic, started this season, was strong, then had a very weak portion of the season, like a good chunk of games, but he's been a lot better, especially since that game against the Winnipeg Jets where he was very good. And Evander Kane now seems to be on this hot streak. Hopefully that's something that can last, because, you know, streaky players, you hope that it comes into the playoffs, but you don't want to bet on the fact that it'll come into the playoffs. A historic player that the Sharks have had who has been streaky in the past is, of course, Patrick Marleau, longtime San Jose Sharks, now with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was also a very streaky player back in his time with the Sharks, or at least later on in his career, certainly when I watched him. But Evander Kane, a very solid night tonight. Tomas Hertl, I thought, had a very good night as well, offensively and defensively. I thought he played it. Timo Meier, you know, a player who has been a bit cold in the past. He got 2 assists tonight, so still no goals, but I thought the puck was following him around a lot. I thought he was making a lot of very nice plays in general. Logan Couture, of course, was strong defensively. I thought Thornton actually had an okay game, nothing spectacular. Joe Pavelski, of course, his 25th goal of the season. Again, as I've mentioned time and time before with Joe Pavelski, not extremely dominant as like he never really is, but he comes in very clutch with some nice goals. And of course, the 25th, that's a team-leading goal, a team-leading 25th goal. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks, of course, as I said, were spectacular, and they will be back in action against the Los Angeles Kings on Monday. They might have Vlasic back, they might have Šimek back, and so in true Sharks fashion, I expect them to get completely destroyed by one of the worst teams in the NHL after they put up such a fantastic effort here against the best team in the NHL. But on a more serious note, the Sharks, if they can take the momentum that they get, as I said, this was going to be a huge momentum game for the Sharks. If they manage to win down 3 defensemen, and they do manage to do so, hopefully they can take that momentum in against the Los Angeles Kings and take those 2 points that should be a lot easier to come by than the game tonight against the Lightning. Class dismissed.